Yakuza originally released on the PlayStation 2 in 2005 to critical acclaim in Japan. This success led to one of SEGA's most popular import series, spanning 7 main entries and several spin-offs. Yakuza Kiwami is a remake of the game that started it all. However, unlike a lot of remakes where the game is preserved in the state it originally released, Yakuza Kiwami takes a different approach. The entire game is remade from the ground up in the Yakuza 0 engine, and with it carries over the fighting styles it introduced, completely overhauling the original game's fighting system. The game is also completely redubbed by the original Japanese voice actors to fit the rest of the tone of the series. So how does this remake hold up? Like I mentioned in my Yakuza 0 and Yakuza 5 review, the Yakuza stories feel like a really good crime movie in the day-to-day life of the Japanese criminal underworld, and Yakuza Kiwami is no different. The story of Yakuza Kiwami has you playing as Kazuma Kiryu, fresh out of prison, for apparently murdering his former boss. From here, in the 10 years he was away, everything is turned upside down, and the Tojo clan is on the brink of civil war over a missing 10 billion yen. Now, Kiryu must find out what caused all this madness in his absence, while trying to figure out what happened to his 2 childhood friends. Yakuza Kiwami's writing is still every bit as good as the rest of the modern series. In this remake, the plot was much more fleshed out compared to the original game. To do this without changing anything major from the original plot, the game introduces small changes, whether explaining a character's motives or actions more, or completely adding new scenes to help drive a point home. This is done really well, and never once compromises the original game's story in the changes that it makes. Gameplay-wise, Yakuza Kiwami is divided into story segments and the sandbox segments. In the story segments, you are going through the normal story beats where you go to different missions to progress the story. These missions more or less boil down to beating up waves of enemies as you make your way through different buildings and areas. Now don't let this turn you off the game as just some sort of grindy beat-em-up game. Yakuza Kiwami's combat is extremely fluid, giving you 4 different combat classes at your disposal, all 4 returning from Yakuza 0. You are also able to switch up your combat on the fly to best suit the battle at hand. Also, as opposed to Yakuza 0, where you get large sums of cash for beating enemies, you get traditional experience, and you use this experience to level up your fight trees. The amount of depth to all of the things you can unlock for fighting is absolutely amazing. It will encourage you to grind on as many enemies as you can to get the most out of your experience bar. Since you'll get into random fights with street thugs and rival Yakuza members often while exploring the sandbox, it is good to have a really solid and smooth combat system. Each combat mode felt extremely unique and fun to use. I could switch between fast action rush moves that relied on dodging and speed to becoming a beast and grabbing nearby motorcycles and wailing away at my foes. The game's combat is just downright addicting, and as always, the heat moves you can do against enemies are not only satisfying to watch, but can be a bit gruesome at times. But you know what? I loved it. When it comes to the sandbox gameplay, you have all of Kamurocho to explore. Here you can partake in the Japanese nightlife, such as going out gambling, to nightclubs, eating at the best restaurants in town, or going on hot dates. Or you can embrace the inner nerds that Kiryu is, and have fun playing at the arcades, pocket car racing, or playing shogi. Or you can go around town and solving people's troubles by completing one of the 78 side stories available to you in this game. The sub-stories is what really gives the game a life of its own. These stories can be discovered by going into certain areas of town, or they can be triggered while casually going on your way to the next story beat. You have the ability to completely ignore these stories, of course, so they never truly ruin the flow. That said, they are pretty fun and sometimes comedic. One example is, while passing a public restroom, you find a man who is out of toilet paper and can't leave. Another example is getting roped into other people's affairs, and you have to act as a bit of a middleman. What really makes these stories even better is just how unique they all feel and Kiryu's reaction to all of them. This adds a nice level of character development to Kiryu as well, as you can see the world through his eyes and what he thinks of his surroundings. The biggest new update to the overworld, however, is the inclusion of Majima everywhere. Goro Majima was one of the duo protagonists from Yakuza 0, and is a fan-favorite reoccurring character from the rest of the series. Majima only has one goal, and that's to fight Kiryu at his prime. The problem is, Kiryu is a bit softer after a stint in prison, so Majima's goal now is to toughen him up back to his glory days for a proper fight. Like the name implies, Majima can literally be everywhere in this game. You'll sometimes run into him on the streets, or you may find him hiding in wait to ambush Kiryu from under a manhole cover. However, ready or not, once Majima has you in his sights, it's time to throw down. Honestly, the Majima is everywhere segments is easily one of my favorite things about this remake. Not only does he provide a good challenge that the normal everyday street thugs can't provide, but he is the only way to properly upgrade Kiryu's ultimate fight tree, the dragon style. So this here encourages the player to go out and look for Majima in any way you can to increase your Majima's everywhere rating. The higher it is, the tougher he will be to take down. He will also use his combat styles from Yakuza 0, which can get pretty nasty for you if you're not too careful. Also, not every encounter with him is always a fight. Sometimes he'll just want to play you in a game of darts, or go bowling with you. It honestly adds a lot of charm to Majima's unpredictable nature. However, while I absolutely love Majima and the Majima is everywhere segments, it does kinda cheapen his story importance in the game. In the original PS2 game, you meet him at the beginning and don't see him again until the halfway point for a big reveal. But since you are seeing him around everywhere, it doesn't really feel as special when you fight him in these story moments, seeing as he can appear at any time while roaming the streets, and even as a surprise mini-boss fight in the story. That said, I guess it does go off the territory in this game's remake to change things up. Visually, Yakuza Kiwami is a treat to look at. It makes use of the Yakuza 0 engine very well, and this game actually runs better at times than 0. The soundtrack for this game is also very remarkable for the different tracks they use throughout the game. From the most intense combat to the deepest story development, there is a track for everything to make it flow well. The only downside about this is that the game is clearly reusing PS2 animations, so while the models have a fresh coat of paint, in-game cutscenes still use the old PS2 movement cycles. This can be quite jarring compared to the newer scenes, especially where they have scenes where they have the old animations mixed in with new ones. I don't understand why SEGA didn't opt to completely redo all the scenes for consistency. However, it doesn't really take too much away from the overall story, but it doesn't look all that great either. The last thing I want to mention is that Yakuza Kiwami isn't just called Kiwami to sound cool. There's a new fighting technique in this game called the Kiwami moves. These moves can only be performed on bosses under certain circumstances. When a boss is at low health, he will begin to flash a color. You must then switch to a combat that corresponds with that color while in heat mode. From here, you will perform a Kiwami attack against the boss. This is the ultimate heat move that will allow you to do massive damage, and in most cases finish the boss. However, if you don't have the heat meter, the boss will regain health for a certain amount of time before attacking again. I feel like this is done to balance the poor boss fights from the original game, but that said, boss fights still feel like they could have used a lot of balancing, since some of them can be infuriating at times for all the wrong reasons, such as constantly grabbing you no matter what you do. Yakuza Kiwami honestly rides on the thin line between a remake and a reimagining of a classic game. It keeps all of the original story beats and brings the game's visuals into the modern day, while incorporating a lot of the newer game mechanics without hampering the original game's integrity. This game is honestly the best way to experience the original Yakuza. Also, with the amount of extra side content in this game, you can sometimes get lost in the game's world and drop over 10 hours between story beats. This honestly is pure bliss to me, because I love getting lost in this world all over again. Despite a few of the flaws, Yakuza Kiwami is the textbook definition of how remakes should be done. For those of you who are looking to delve into the series for the first time, this is the perfect entry at only $29.99 US. You will have an adventure that'll more than pay for itself, and maybe fall in love with a new series you didn't know you'd love. I truly hope SEGA will continue to remake these classics. And that does it for our review of Yakuza Kiwami. To see the full written review, be sure to check out our website, GamingGamma.com. A link to that review will be provided down in the description bar below. We'll also be giving away 3 copies of Yakuza Kiwami as well. A link to that giveaway will be down in the description bar below, and the link to that video should be appearing right about now. Also, if you're interested, be sure to check out our other reviews of the Yakuza games. We reviewed Yakuza 0 and 5. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down in the comment section below. I love reading them. And if you're new to my channel, be sure to stick around and subscribe for future Let's Plays, reviews, commentaries, giveaways, and more. And as always, everyone, thanks for watching.